Lots of promising and low-cost drugs get down people's gullets thanks to decades of reform at the Food and Drug Administration. She's retired now, but my next guest was the agent behind the modernization of FDA's drug review process. Colleagues call her a force of nature. Now she's a finalist in this year's Service to America Medals program. Former Principal Deputy Commissioner Janet Woodcock joins me now. Ms. Woodcock, great to have you on.
Thank you.
And I guess people forget that 30 years or so ago, FDA was really a cumbersome apparatus keeping things from getting to the public that should have. Fair way to characterize it?
Sure. People talked about the drug lag, that people in other countries all over Europe and other places were able to get drugs, newly introduced drugs for previously untreated conditions much faster, years faster than they could in the United States.
And what inspired you to try to start changing this?
Well, I'm a doctor. My focus has always been on patients and helping people and relieving suffering. And, when I took over the Center for Drugs in 1994, the user fee program had just started. And part of the reason FDA was so slow was that, it was so under-resourced. And the user fee program was to address that. But it was also not managed. And so, we had to put in, really develop the procedures to make sure that drugs are thoroughly vetted, that they're safe, that they're effective, but, that we can get through that. We have a process, we can get through the information quickly.
And I understand one of your big reforms was convincing Congress to let the agency initiate user fees for generic manufacturers, because that was taking a long time. This was the practice for the primary inventors of the drugs. They had to pay for the processes, but not the generics.
Yes, and that was a tough battle. The generic industry wasn't well united about it, but we finally got it through, and that year we approved 1,000 generic drugs. And those are so important because those are the drugs that you can get, like for $10 a month, you can get your drug supply of generic drugs, and it really lowers the cost, but there has to be more than one generic kind on the market to really get the prices down. So we got that through, and we totally overhauled our process, new computer system, total reorganization of the process, and so forth. And the success has continued, and the industry has been satisfied enough that they've agreed to have Congress, reauthorize the program.
And you mentioned computer systems, and the FDA was noted for being a little bit behind at some point in the technology base that it had to enable employees to get their work done. Tell us about what you did there, what you helped do there.
Well, the problem was people would deliver tractor trailers full of dossiers, to our loading dock. And then the people reviewing them, some of them were still dictating and then having secretaries type with carbon paper, type their reviews. I got everyone to move over to electronic submissions, electronic review, electronic signatures, and so forth. This means we can access the data really fast. They can see what they've done in the past, too, because it's not in some document room, miles long paper. But that was a big struggle and big effort. It involved many people, but we got it done, and really we're paperless now and have been they have been for quite some time.
We were speaking with Dr. Janet Woodcock. She retired as Principal Deputy Commissioner of the FDA, and she's a finalist in this year's Service to America Medals program. And you are a doctor. What got you interested in federal service, and particularly the FDA, in the first place?
Well, it was kind of an accident. I was working at UCSF in San Francisco. My husband transferred to NIH from Stanford, and so I came along with a small baby. And so I, didn't want to pick up a really academic type of job. So I started working part-time at the Biologics Center at FDA because I had been doing research on monoclonal antibodies, and they were regulating them at the time.
Right. And so that you decided you liked it enough at part-time to become full-time.
It was so interesting. It was a combination of medicine, science, law, policy, all mixed together. And that was in the throes of the biotech revolution. And the program I ran, we approved like the first drug for cystic fibrosis. We approved a drug for multiple sclerosis that was really became a standard of care for quite a long time, although that was a fight to get it through. That was about the first time I learned about some of the agency's, shall we say, challenges and opportunities for improvement was the fight we had over getting that approved for multiple sclerosis. But when I retired, I got a letter from a woman, this was approved 30 years ago, from a woman in the Midwest. She said she got in the lottery when that drug was approved and was able to get it because there was a shortage. And it changed her life, and she's been healthy ever since, and her multiple sclerosis under control. And I've heard from a lot of patients on the outside, people who have been helped by the medicines.
Another quality that you brought was a better relationship between the agency and the drug industry, because when there's too much contention, things can really slow down. How did you approach that one?
Right. Well, many people seem to believe that adversarial relationships are good. They feel good about them. But I really stress professionalism. Our job isn't to fight with people. Our job is to be impartial scientific evaluators, right? And on behalf of the public, on behalf of the patients. And it doesn't help patients if you're fighting with a company, they do the wrong development program, they have a promising drug, but when they come in, you say, oh, sorry, you have to start over again. Who does that really help? It might make somebody feel good that they were so strong and so forth, but actually it isn't the right way. The FDA needs to work with the companies, figure out how the drug should be evaluated to see what its performance characteristics are and if they meet the standards. And that means interacting, because often this is uncertainty. We're talking in a lot of cases, the best cases, right? We're talking about drugs that are treating conditions that don't have treatments now. And so nobody really knows how to evaluate them. And so there has to be that collaboration, but that doesn't mean what they call regulatory capture. That simply means a high level of professionalism.
And I guess maybe even regulators need a certain degree of humility and I don't know, not deference so much, but a sense of restraint sometimes in how they approach those that are regulated, because they're trying to be productive also.
Right. Well, you have to realize, I think, and that was something that was always challenging when I was at the agency. The agency is always severely criticized for anything that's seen as, quote, a mistake. Okay. So if a drug gets out there and then there are unforeseen problems that everybody, whatever, hearings, what have you, And on the other hand, all the triumphs are really not recognized very much, particularly as the medicines may cost a lot. So the reviewers are under a lot of pressure to get it right, and that can cause excessive conservatism. And people have to realize we're working not for ourselves, we're working for the people of this country on their behalf. And that means trying to get it right and not pushing for absolute perfection, because that doesn't happen in human endeavors.
Sure. And finally, you served a lot of commissioners, and without naming names, what makes an effective commissioner over such it's a sprawling empire in many ways, and it has many, many different domains because it is food and drugs, and there's a huge infrastructure that supports it. What should the commissioners do to be most effective?
Well, I think they need to pick their battles. We've had effective commissioners who have been in the political, media sphere. They've been the face of the agency very effectively. They've been very good at that. We've had commissioners who are very good at administration and try to figure out, certain things that they want to accomplish administratively when they're in the position. People who struggle they're trying to do everything. I think, as you said, the agency is so large, people have on the outside have a wrong idea, I think, of what the role of what a commissioner can actually do. I was acting commissioner for a year at the agency and during COVID. And
lucky you.
Yeah. Well, I think I could bring a lot to that role because of my long experience in the agency, right? Our biggest crisis we had then was infant formula, which wasn't a drug issue at all. But I think, people really need to trust the career staff, and they need to a commissioner to be very successful will lean on the career